Hi, welcome to the Middlebury School in Italy pre-departure orientation for spring 2025. As a special note, this is a re-recording of the presentation that happened on Thursday, October 17th. In this presentation, we'll cover a lot of different information. We'll start off by looking at who will be participating in the program this spring. We'll talk about where important information lives. There is a section on identity and study abroad, and I want to acknowledge here that this is a really important topic and plays a huge part in students' experiences in their study abroad programs. The one slide that I have here will not do it justice, but I do hope that it serves as a conversation starter and that we can keep talking about these important topics through the course of your pre-departure and even while you are abroad in Italy. We will spend some time talking about student visas and then look at more logistical information, such as expenses and budgeting, what to expect upon arrival and for orientation, how housing will work for the program, and then academic and internship aspects. We'll also look a little bit at what student life in Italy is like. After that, there will be a section about staying safe in Italy and while you're studying abroad. I do want to offer a trigger warning for this section. There is a brief discussion about sexual harassment and assault. So if this is something that you would like to step away for or skip ahead for, please feel free to do so. It'll be about a 1 to 2 minute conversation. We will finally finish up with some odds and ends, and then separately, I will include a couple of videos from conversations that we've had with past program participants who have some really great advice and suggestions for outgoing students. Finally, there are 4 sections on this list here that all have a double star next to them. These are sections that have been pre-recorded and can be found in your study abroad portals for Middlebury. These sections are just as important as the information that we'll discuss here today, but we didn't have enough time to talk about all of it in the hour that we have together. So please do make sure that you take some time to sit down and go through them carefully. They take about 20 minutes all together, all 4 of them. And then, of course, any questions that come up, please feel free to let me know. So coming up is the big November 1st deadline. This is when most of your materials are going to be due. There are a few exceptions, namely your fiscal code, which we'll talk about more in just a moment, 2 modules about sustainability and study abroad and identity and study abroad. These modules are exercises that are designed to allow you time to reflect and think and write. And so having a set deadline is a little counterintuitive because we don't want you rushing through them just to complete them for the deadline. So do make sure that you do them before you leave, but find a time when you can really sit down and focus on these so that you can work through them at your own pace. Of course, the visa upload will not be due November 1st. It is highly unlikely that anybody will have their visa by November 1st. And then your contact info upon arrival in Florence, you will have, as the name suggests, once you're in Florence. If you are going through the group visa application process and you are mailing me your materials, please make sure that these materials are postmarked, so in the mail by November 1st. If you've been accepted to the program but haven't yet clicked on that commit button, please be sure to do so so that we know that you're joining us. And then for those of you who are not currently full-time students at Middlebury, within the next couple of weeks, you will receive an email from our IT department with instructions on how to activate your Middlebury email account. Please keep an eye out for that message and be sure to activate your account once you receive it. Okay, chi siamo? Who are we this spring? We have a pretty good sized group going to Florence. There will be about 37 undergraduate students, and these students are spread out between the 3 different language levels that we offer: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. We will also have 3 graduate students at the program as well. We currently have 2 full-time staff members with the school in Italy, our program director, Dr. Rosa Cuda, and our assistant to the director, Patrizia Nesti. Dr. Cuda is going to be your academic advisor for the duration of your time with the program, so she's available for any questions that you might have about course selection or any concerns that you have about academics during the semester. Patrizia will handle a lot of the student service side of things, including housing. So you'll be hearing from her in a couple weeks about selecting your housing for spring. She'll also help with orientation, excursions, and activities, and is certainly available for any questions that you might have. We will also have a third staff member joining us later this winter, so you'll have a chance to meet them once you're in Florence. I do like to pause here before we go much further and talk to students about this idea of being the author of your own study abroad story. This might seem a little corny, but it's a really good frame to sort of start your journey with, because you want to really make this experience what's going to be most meaningful for you. So you are in the driver's seat with this experience. We are here to support you, but it's up to you to make it what you will. So part of this means making sure that you're taking time to prepare now for your semester in Italy. This means setting aside some time to do research about the destination, and this can be research on topics that are of interest to you. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, but if you're interested in politics, learning more about Italian politics, if you're a music fan, learning what kinds of music and artists are popular at the moment in Italy. So making sure that you're carving out some time to do those things so that you can hit the ground running once you get there. Also, don't be shy about asking questions. There are a lot of moving pieces to the study abroad process, and it's very normal and to be expected to have lots of questions. I'm here to help with that, as are my colleagues in Italy, so don't hesitate to reach out at any time if we can be of help. And then finally, as much work as you want to put into preparing for your time abroad, you also want to be prepared for some surprises. It's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. There are always things that don't go exactly the way you expected. So it's good to be ready for that too. And sometimes those surprises bring with them some of the best parts of the experience. So be open to that and know that while it's important to prepare, it's also important to expect the unexpected. It's a lot of information that we're covering today. I am going to share this recording with you all. And as well, a lot of the same information is available in the handbooks that are online and in your Middlebury Study Abroad portal. As a reminder, there are two handbooks that you want to be familiar with. There's the General Schools Abroad Handbook, which has a lot of policy information, and then the School in Italy Specific Handbook, which will tell you more about the program. If you have the time to go through these in detail, that is great, but at least please take time to click through and know what information lives where so that when questions do come up, you can also go there for reference. All right. So as I said, identity and study abroad is a really important topic. And as it probably goes without saying, just like your identity will impact your experience at home, it can also impact your experience while abroad and vice versa. A lot of students do find that their identities, their understanding of their identities and of themselves shifts or changes after an experience abroad, or that they find it really is somewhat fluid depending on what context they're in. So these are really big ideas to sort of process and grapple with, and so it's important to be aware and be prepared for that too. We have some resources and some exercises, including the Identity and Study Abroad module, that are meant to help support you in working through this, but we can always offer more information and support as well. When you're in Italy or anytime you're abroad, it's also important to be sensitive to other students' identities. You may be traveling with people that you already know really well, and you know how they identify in a certain context, but it's not uncommon for folks when they first get somewhere new to wait to share certain things about themselves until they feel comfortable or until they feel like they understand better the context in which they find themselves. So just be mindful of that and make sure that you're not sharing something about somebody before they might be ready to share that about themselves. We also have a number of program alums who have self-identified with different identity communities and who have volunteered to talk with outgoing students about their experiences as members of those communities. So if you are interested in learning more about what it's like to be a student in Florence who identifies as LGBTQIA+, or as a student who is living with a chronic medical condition, whatever the case may be, please feel free to reach out. I'll take a look at our list and see if there is somebody that I can connect you with. Finally, there is a part of our website that is dedicated to resources about diversity, identity, and study abroad. These are not all Italy-specific resources, but it's a great place to start. There are some articles, some videos, and different reflection questions that are designed to be a companion to the identity module that you'll be working through. Okay, so moving on to some more logistical things, your fiscal code. This is something that you've probably seen listed in your portal as one thing that you'll want to do before you get to Italy, but you may be wondering what exactly it is and why you need it, which are both great questions. So the fiscal code is as a tax ID number for Italy. The closest thing that we have to something like a fiscal code in the United States is a social security number. However, the fiscal code is not as sensitive as a social security number is. It's really just meant as another form of identification and is most often used by our students when they're signing apartment leases or housing agreements. So what we have found is that in recent years, especially as students are starting to confirm their housing assignments for the semester, some landlords or other proprietors want this fiscal code ahead of time so that they can finalize all the paperwork. So as much as possible, we really do want students to try and get this code before they arrive in Italy. You'll be going through the consulate that has jurisdiction over your home address, so not your school's address. So for example, if you live in New York, you'll be going through the New York consulate, even if you're a student in Massachusetts or a student in California, you want to go through the consulate that has jurisdiction over your home address. Each consulate does have a slightly different procedure. So you have links in the portal for a lot of the different ones that you might be going through. If you don't see your consulate there, however, let me know. I'm happy to find the information for you. It is really going to be best if you can do this ahead of time, but if it's not possible, or if you submit your request to the consulate and never hear back, you can also get your fiscal code in Florence. So I'm going to ask everybody to submit their requests by December 1st so that you have about 2 months to get the code back. I will also check in probably in January or maybe in December to see how things are going. And if you haven't received a response by that point, or if for some reason it's just not going to work to make this request ahead of time, let me know. I'll make a list to send to Patrizia of students who do need to apply for the code once they're in Florence. All right, so student visas. This is probably one of the most crucial and time-sensitive parts of preparing to go abroad. It is something that you need to do ahead of time, and so you want to have this on your radar and start working on it now. You will have two options for applying for your visa. You can either go through the Middlebury Group process, or you can apply independently. And there are pros and cons to both options, so it's really a matter of what makes the most sense for you. If you go through the Middlebury Group process, that means you're going to submit all of your documents to me, and I will go to Boston on your behalf to submit the application. What this means is that you will have fewer requirements that you need to submit because there will be certain documentation that I will be taking care of on my end so that you don't need to do it. The downside to the group process, though, is that it does take longer. So you have to give me your physical passport by November 1st or have it in the mail by November 1st. And then I usually will get them back between mid-December and mid-January. So if you have international travel plans during this time from early November to mid-January, this may not be the right option for you. Again, though, with the group process, because I'm submitting the application on your behalf, I can provide more assistance because I can communicate with the consulate directly. If you want to apply independently, you will have more documentation that you need to gather. I will still be able to provide you with several of the documents, but it will be your responsibility to make sure that you have everything that you need. Usually, not always, but usually it does take a little bit less time to do the independent process. Average processing time is about 3 weeks, but you have to make sure that you get an appointment. And that can be tricky depending on the consulate. Some bigger consulates like New York, for example, or LA, it can be really hard to get an appointment. So if you want to apply independently, you need to be going to the website now, looking at their calendar regularly, and snagging the first appointment that you can. I will also do my best to help as much as I can, but again, because you're doing this directly with the consulate, I won't be able to intervene quite as much as I would with the group process. If you happen to be a citizen of China or India, I strongly, strongly recommend that you apply through the group process with Middlebury. This is because the Italian consulates in those two countries have residency requirements that make many international students, unfortunately, ineligible to apply, even if they are citizens of those countries. So basically, in China and in India, the Italian consulates there require that you have been physically living in the country for at least 6 months before you submit an application. So for a lot of students, that's not possible because you've been here studying. So again, please talk with me about this, but in most cases, it's going to be best for you to apply in the US and ideally with the group process. All right, so again, going through me, submitting your materials to me, they need to be postmarked in the mail by November 1st. My appointment is on November 15th, so there's a little bit of wiggle room, but not a whole lot. So that's why that November 1st deadline is so crucial. You do need to send your actual passport to me. Please make sure it is signed before you mail it, otherwise it won't be considered valid. There is a visa application form that you will need to complete. That in your portal, it comes with a step-by-step guide for how to fill the application out. Please follow those directions very carefully. Even if you've filled out an application form like this before and it seems really straightforward, because this is a group process, there are certain questions that have to be answered in a particular way. So it's really crucial that you're taking a look at that guide and making sure your answers match. Everybody does also need to submit a visa application fee. This is a money order for $54.90. A money order is essentially a prepaid check that you can purchase at any post office and at many pharmacies, Western Union locations, and other places like that. Make sure the amount is exact. Do not round up or down. And then when you get the money order, you need to make it out to the Italian consulate in Boston. Also make sure that you sign it if there's a place for you to sign. You will need to have your round trip flight itinerary booked. It does need to be round trip, so you need to show the date that you're arriving in Italy and the date that you're going to be leaving Italy. And you need to go back to your home country, whatever that might be. Or I'm sorry, or if you happen to have long-term status in another country, so if you're an international student in the US, for example, or a permanent resident in the US, you can also go back there or have your flight itinerary go back there as well. But you do need to show very clearly the name of the airports and your name as well so that we know it's your itinerary. You need to submit copies of your student ID and your driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, that's fine. Just skip that part. You will also need to submit what's called a student verification letter. So this is a letter that comes from your registrar's office or from your study abroad office confirming that you plan to go back to your home institution to finish your degree after you're finished studying in Italy. If you are a Middlebury student or a Sarah Lawrence student, I will be able to get these letters on your behalf, so you do not need to request these. Students from other universities and colleges, I'm sorry I can't do the same for you, but there is a template in there that you can submit to your registrar's office. And if there are any questions or concerns, let me know and I'm happy to help with that. You need to show proof of financial solvency as well. So this is showing that you have access to a certain amount of money to support yourself while you're in Italy. The amount that the Boston consulate requires is the equivalent of $30 a day. And there's a chart in your portal that shows how much this is total depending on the length of your stay. Everybody does need to submit a bank account with their name on it that shows the balance. For this, please submit your October bank statement, even if it's going to be released early November. As long as you're comfortable doing this, feel free to email it to me once you have it. We need it to be as current as possible. So your October bank statement with showing the balance, it could have your name on it. It could also have somebody else's name on it as well. And if the amount in the account doesn't quite add up to the amount that the consulate is requesting, you can supplement the bank statement with either a financial aid letter from your home institution or with an affidavit of support, usually from a parent or guardian that is notarized. So it's a form saying that they agree to financially support you while you're in Italy, and then a copy of their bank statement as well. Again, Middlebury and Sarah Lawrence students, for those of you who do receive financial aid, I will be able to request these letters on your behalf. Students from other schools, I'm sorry I can't do the same, but again, let me know if I can help with that. Finally, you'll need a passport-sized photo. So this is an actual photograph of your face that you would use for applying for a new passport, for example. If you've gotten a new passport recently and you still have a photo left over, you can use that one. Otherwise, you can go to the post office, you can go to a pharmacy or a shipping supply store and get new photos taken. And then finally, the way that I'm going to return your passports to you once they're ready is by mail. So you need to send me a prepaid self-addressed trackable return envelope for an address where you're likely going to be in December and in January. So if you're not going to be on campus over break, don't send me an envelope that has your campus address on it. It needs to be an address where you will be able to receive it during the months of December and January. If you are going to be somewhere that is typically, a really busy neighborhood, or if you're going to be at a house or in an apartment building that often has the mail area or mail center left unattended, I would strongly recommend that you address the envelope to an office or another daytime address where you know somebody is going to be there to receive it, just to prevent any loss of your passport. And then finally, independent applicants, again, you need to be going to your consulate's website and working now to schedule an appointment. Once you know when your appointment is scheduled, let me know. I'll make sure that you have your documentation in time. This is the address that you need to send your materials to. So this is my office at Middlebury College. If you are on Middlebury's campus, you can also drop them off to me in person. My office is Sunderland 124. I'm there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Or if I'm not there, you can go to the main office, Sunderland 128 at the end of the hall. Sarah Lawrence students, I'm going to be on campus on October 28th at Swinford House. We'll have a meeting there, and you can also drop off your materials to me then. As I said, my appointment at the consulate is November 15th. So as long as things are in the mail by November 1st, I should have everything in time. Even though there's a little bit of a buffer, if you are significantly late with your materials, I unfortunately will have to remove you from the group process. I am only granted one appointment at the consulate every semester. I can only present one batch of applications, so I can't go back again. I can't submit things late or after the fact. So Please be mindful, please be as timely as possible, and if you have any questions or concerns, let me know. And then finally, this is just a heads up for some of you who may be applying for a permesso di soggiorno, which is a residency permit, and is often the last step in the student visa process. For some of you, depending on how long you're staying in Italy, you may not actually need to do this in the spring, but some of you might. And so I just want to make sure you all have this information. You don't need to remember any of this now, but the big thing to be aware of is that you do need to pay for it in cash. And so you want to be able to access the equivalent of 118 euro if and when it comes time to apply for the permesso. Okay. So thinking about money and budgeting and cash, um, it's important to think about how you're going to budget for this semester abroad. Middlebury will be billing you for the program tuition only. So this includes your health insurance, but nothing else, with the exception of students who are going to live in the residence hall. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. If you are a visiting student from another college or university, you may be paying your home institution tuition directly, just like you would any other semester, instead of getting a bill from Middlebury. If you're not sure which is the case, check with your study abroad office. And then, as I mentioned, if you opt to live in a residence hall, you may have some of those housing expenses included on your bill as well. If you're someone who's going to be paying tuition to your home institution, you may end up getting two bills. You may get one from your home institution for tuition and a second from Middlebury for your housing. Middlebury students should also be aware that there is a study abroad fee of $1,900 per semester. Students coming from other colleges and universities may very likely have a similar study abroad fee. So again, you can check with your study abroad office to see if that's the case. There are a number of other expenses that we have estimated for your semester that can be found on the dates and fees page for the school in Italy. These are called out of pocket, not necessarily because your financial aid won't cover them, but because you're going to be paying for them as you go throughout the semester. So you as the student are going to be managing these payments. Because of this, and because for a lot of students, going abroad is the first time where they do actually have to manage payments on a regular basis. Just because, a typical semester on campus, you're paying for everything up front. It's really a good idea to use a budgeting tool to help you. So you can take a look at our page for students with financial considerations for some tips on different tools that you can use. But really anything that works for you is great. So it could be a spreadsheet, an app, a notebook, but something that's going to help you keep an eye on your finances. You also want to think about how you're going to access your money while you're in Italy. Credit cards are pretty easy to use and can be used in most places, but not in all. So this cannot be the only type of access to money that you have. You can also bring an ATM or a debit card to withdraw cash. Just keep in mind that there are always transaction fees associated with any ATM withdrawal. So you want to try to limit those as much as you can just to cut down on those fees. Using a money transfer service like Western Union can be a really helpful alternative to withdrawing cash from an ATM, especially for larger payments like your homestay or your apartment. There may also be the option of opening a local bank account. This could be more trouble than it's worth, especially if you're only going to be in Italy for a semester. But if this is of interest, you can always ask us for more information. It's also a good idea to research some of the extras that you might be interested in ahead of time. So these could be things like taking an extra art class or dance class. It could be joining a gym. It could be taking a trip to Rome at some point, whatever it might be. All those things do add up. So doing a little research, knowing how much wiggle room you want to have in your budget, and also keeping in mind that your first month is often more expensive for a couple of reasons. One is you might be buying things for your room or for your apartment to help you settle in. And then you might also too be eating out more as you explore the city, be, trying different things before settling into a routine. So keep that in mind too. And then finally, for any students who receive financial aid, please consult with your Student Financial Services office this semester about how your aid is going to transfer and work while you're abroad. For some students, again, because you have a number of payments that you're managing throughout the semester, you may be receiving some aid funds that you will use to help cover those expenses. So it's good to know what to expect. Make sure that you have a direct deposit set up with your financial services office. So if you do have some of those funds coming your way, you have access to them as quickly as possible. A big part of budgeting, especially in Europe, is thinking about how much you want to travel while you're there. It's very easy to travel within Italy as well as around the EU. And so you want to think about what part of not only your budget, financial budget, but also your time budget you want to dedicate to traveling. So thinking about, do you have, top 3 or top 5 destinations you want to make sure that you go to before the semester ends? And then how are you going to balance your travels with the other aspects of your life? So your schoolwork, your new friends, if you have an internship, your internship hours. There's no right or wrong in terms of finding that balance, but it's something to really reflect on, especially because the more time that you spend away from Florence, the less time you have to get to know it as a host city, the less time you have to get to know your roommates, your homestay family, the new friends that you've made. So it's a personal choice, but it's one that's good to be mindful of. Middlebury will plan one overnight or multi-day excursion for students during the semester, as well as some local cultural activities within Florence and the surrounding area. So those are certainly things that you can take advantage of as well. The official arrival date for Italy will be February 8th. Orientation will begin February 10th, and this break or this difference in the dates is deliberate. We want to make sure that you have time to settle in and rest before you begin orientation. You are going to be responsible for your own transportation from the airport to your final destination, so to your apartment or homestay or residence hall. My strong recommendation is that if you can, budget for a taxi. You're going to be tired when you arrive. You're going to have all of your stuff with you. So it's going to be much easier if you can just let yourself take a taxi when you first get there. For orientation will actually begin prior to February 10th. You'll receive some videos from Dr. Kuda that she'll ask you to watch before you get there, so make sure that you take time to do that. In country then, orientation is going to run technically from February 10th to February 28th. This doesn't mean that there's going to be orientation activities every single day during this 3-week period, but it does mean that we're going to ask you to stick close to home because there may be certain follow-up meetings or appointments that we're not able to schedule right now, but that are going to be really important in making sure you get everything settled for this semester. So sometimes students feel like they have a lot of downtime or a lot of free time during these first few weeks because classes haven't been finalized, internships haven't started yet. My recommendation is to use this free time to really explore Florence and to get to know your new city. And you can certainly take small trips in the area as well, but don't start going too far afield just yet because you need to be available for any follow-up appointments after the first week or so when the bulk of orientation activities will take place. Okay, housing. So for housing, you have two different options. You can either go through the program's pre-selection process, which I would say the vast majority of our students probably do, or you can find your own. Um, if you want to go through the pre-selection process, it is key that you pay attention to the deadlines that Patrizia is going to send you. She's going to give you all of this information in another couple of weeks. So this is just a preview. You will receive this information again and in more detail. You will first receive access to a website that lists all of the housing options available for the spring. This is going to be available on November 1st. You will then be asked to rank usually top 5 or top 10 choices and send that ranking to Patrizia by November 5th. Patrizia will then work on matching everybody based on their selections. So you should hear from her within the following 10 days or so about where you've been placed. Everybody will need to pay a housing deposit to secure their spot. So again, thinking back to budgeting, know that this is going to be coming up as well. This is going to be due within 3 business days of receiving your confirmation from Patrizia. And then you also need to show Patrizia receipt of deposit payment. So basically proof that you sent the deposit. This is going to be due November 18th. You see some times listed here. The times I have are in Eastern Standard Time. When Patrizia sends you information, her times are going to be in Italian time. Remember this, please, and make sure that you're doing the math so that you don't miss any of these crucial deadlines. Again, thinking about payment going forward, those of you in homestays and shared apartments, after you pay the deposit, you'll be paying on a monthly basis directly to your homestay family or to your landlord. If you are living in a residence hall, this will be billed ahead of time. You will have to pay the deposit separately with a credit card, but then you'll receive a bill from Middlebury for the semester. In all cases, it's really important to be mindful of utility usage wherever you're living. I know a lot of us are already pretty mindful, pretty careful with our sustainability practices, but this is of utmost importance to many Italians because utilities in Italy are very expensive. And so often, early on, any sort of misunderstandings or frustrations between housemates or roommates comes from differences in use of utilities. So just be mindful, short showers, lights off when you're not in the room, etc., etc. And then if you want to find your own housing, usually this would mean finding a room in a shared apartment for the semester. The best thing to do is to arrive to Florence maybe about 2 weeks early. You'll be living in an Airbnb, a hostel, a hotel during that time, and dedicate that time to visiting potential apartments in person to find a place to live. I strongly caution you against committing to a living arrangement based solely on an online listing. There are unfortunately some scams out there, and so you want to make sure that before you're signing an agreement, sending money over, that somebody has seen the place where you're going to live. So that's why this is best to be done in person. And remember, you are not allowed to live alone or only with other English speakers. We do, as a program, allow students to partner up. So if you have a buddy that you want to live with during the semester, that is fine. But you also need to be living with at least one fluent or native Italian speaker. So either somebody who is local to Florence or to Italy, or potentially another international student, but who has been living in Italy for a while because they are earning a full degree at the University of Florence. All right, academic programs. So hopefully this is just a refresher and that there's nothing surprising here, but it's always good to highlight that one of the hallmarks of our program is the language pledge, and this applies to students at all levels. So regardless of which track you're going to be on, everybody is going to sign and be under the language pledge. There's a really great video on our pre-immersion website that interviews students talking about what it's like to study under the language pledge. And in general, for those of you who may not be familiar, this is a promise that you're going to make to only speak Italian during your time in Florence. So not only in classes, but also in between classes, in the hallways, in the center, when you're out with friends, when you're talking with your roommates or your homestay family. The goal is to have you doing all of that in Italian. There are, of course, some exceptions. So, if you need help, if you are sick or otherwise in distress, by all means, communicate in English or in any language that you prefer. Our staff are bilingual, and so they can help in English as well. Likewise, if you want to call friends or family at home, you can do that in any language that you wish. We just ask that you do that out of earshot of other program students so that they can maintain their pledge while you might be taking a break. The academic program itself is going to vary a bit depending on the level that you're enrolled in. You'll either be taking 3 or 4 courses for a total of 4 or 4.5 Middlebury credits. 4 Middlebury credits is considered a full-time semester. That half unit of credit I'll talk about more in a second, but may only apply in certain cases. So everybody is going to take at least one course that is run by the Middlebury program at the Middlebury Sede or Center. And then depending on your track, the other courses that you take will be a combination of additional courses at the center, courses at the University of Florence, studio art courses, and or an internship. And some of these university courses do have more contact hours per semester than a typical US based course. And so that's where you might get that extra half credit if you happen to take one of those courses. And finally, internships are available on a limited basis. If you do an internship, it would count as one of your classes for the semester, so you would earn academic credit. But it's important to keep in mind that not all colleges and universities in the US award credit for an academic internship. So if this is something that you're interested in, you need to confirm with your school this semester whether or not this is something that you could get credit for. As I mentioned, our internship options are unfortunately limited. So while we will do our best to find placements for everybody who's interested, we unfortunately can't guarantee that everyone is going to be matched with a placement. Nevertheless, if you're interested, there is that internship questionnaire in your portal. Please be sure to fill that out so that we know how many students are hoping to have an internship for this semester. Being that this is credit bearing, there are some structures in place that you'll have to follow. This is basically like having a part-time job. So you're going to have a set number of hours every week that you'll need to complete. There may be a commute involved depending on where your internship is located. You will need to submit periodic reflection pieces or journal entries, and then there will be a longer academic research paper that you will submit at the end of the semester. If this is the kind of thing that doesn't really sound like what you're looking for as a part of your experience, that is totally fine. Don't feel like you have to apply for an internship, but if you do, keep in mind that it really is a commitment for the semester. These internships are unpaid as well. So again, you're earning academic credit for them. You're not getting paid for them. And then finally, the most important thing to do right now is to complete the internship interest form in your portal by November 1st. Everything else that will need to happen in terms of placement, initial interview, etc., will happen once you're in Florence. This is a piece that I really like to highlight here. It is also in the pre-recorded section in your portal, but it's such an important element to be aware of that I do like to talk about it while I'm with students too. So Italian university life and student life in Italy in general looks very different. And so this is a really good reminder to us that education and culture are not mutually exclusive. One informs the other and vice versa. And you will definitely notice that, especially if you're taking a course at the university. At the university and also in our center courses as well, you may notice a very different educational philosophy being practiced. And this comes out in the teaching styles that you'll observe, the structure of the courses that you're going to take, and how you're going to be assessed. So in many cases, again, especially at the university, professors still follow a very traditional lecture-based style of teaching. So that means you might be in a lecture hall with, anywhere between 40 to 150 students taking notes for longer periods of time as the lecture is going on. There often isn't a very well-defined syllabus for the courses either. You'll have information like the course objectives and description and a reading list, but then it's going to be up to you how to structure your time throughout the semester so that you can prepare for the final assessment. Often the final assessment is the only assessment during the semester, and in many cases, it's in the form of an oral exam rather than a written exam. This is very new for a lot of our students, although I will say many students find that the oral exams are actually preferable to written exams because there's less pressure to be very exacting with things like grammar, spelling, syntax, etc. Rather, you're having more of a conversation with the professor. There are tutorials available for the university courses. We strongly encourage you to take advantage of those. They're optional, but they're available for you to sign up if you'd like. And these tutorials will help you to review course materials and to practice and prepare for the final exam. As I mentioned, student life in general outside of the classroom also looks quite different in Italy. In large part, this is due to the fact that most Italian students live at home or live in shared apartments off campus and commute to and from class. And you'll notice that depending on what part of the university you're studying in, there really isn't even much of a campus to speak of. There might be more like a courtyard or a quad, but it's not a dedicated space in the city specifically for the university. Rather, the university buildings are spread out and sprinkled in throughout the city. So this changes the social dynamic quite a bit because it means a lot of students are not hanging out at school in between classes. So it means that meeting people is also going to look different potentially. It's really going to be up to you as the visiting student to be maybe a little more proactive, making efforts to talk to your peers, talk to other students. Questions are always great icebreakers, even if you kind of already know the answer. If you see someone who looks cool and you want to say hi, make up an excuse to ask them about the reading for this week, for example. Joining extracurricular groups, special interest clubs, etc., is a really wonderful way to meet people because you're already starting with something in common. You're already starting with a shared interest. There are some of these groups and clubs available through the university, but there are many, many more available in the greater city of Florence as well. And so this is one thing that you'll notice that we really encourage students to think of the entire city of Florence as their campus for the semester. So you're not just limited to the university or to the Middlebury Center, but you really have the whole city at your disposal. And then finally, we do have a student life page for Florence that you can look at as well as a good starting point to get some ideas of things you might like to do while you're there. Not a whole lot of information on this slide, but as a heads up, we will have some additional pre-arrival meetings with Dr. Kuda in January. There's going to be another general group meeting as well as the option for individual academic meetings. We'll send more details about those as we get closer to the actual dates, but just keep that in mind for now that you'll be hearing from us again about other meetings in January. So I do want to pause here. The health and safety section is next. So here we have some general tips for staying safe while you're abroad. These are not necessarily Italy specific. Really, they're good tips anytime you go anywhere new, even if you're going to somewhere within the United States, but certainly when you're in a different country as well. So as much as you can, try to keep a low profile, not in the sense that you shouldn't visit the touristed places or the popular places to go. They're popular for a reason. By all means, go and check them out. But as much as you can, just try not to draw too much attention to yourself as somebody who might be new or who might be maybe a little lost. So if you need to check Google Maps or check some instructions, do so subtly and make sure that you stay aware of your surroundings while you're doing so. Sticking with the language pledge, only speaking Italian in public, even if you haven't perfected your Florentine accent yet, is also going to help with this as well. Be really careful with your personal belongings, especially if you do visit some of the more popular tourist areas. They're very crowded. There are a lot of people milling around. So make sure that you've got an eye on your bag. Make sure all your zippers are closed and your belongings are safe. Don't leave anything unattended and don't bring anything with you that you don't need to have with you. So if you don't need to have your laptop with you that day, leave it at home. Likewise, your passport, once you get to Italy and you get to where you're living, make sure you have a picture of the ID pages on your phone, but then leave the actual passport in a safe place. If you have travel plans and you're going to be away from Florence overnight, please do make sure that you let Dr. Kuda or Patrizia know. We'll also have a registration system that you can use. And this is not so that we're going to keep really close tabs on you or approve or disapprove of different travel plans. It's just so that we know how to get in touch with you if we need to. So it's really crucial for us just to know where folks are in case we need to reach out. You do want to be mindful of alcohol consumption as well. 18 is the legal drinking age in Italy, so the vast majority of you are going to be of legal age. And if you want to check out the nightlife, you can certainly do so, but please do so safely. Know your limits. Be mindful, be aware of your surroundings. Using the buddy system is key. It really helps to keep everybody safe, stay together, check in at the end of the night, make sure everyone got home okay. There is some research that unfortunately shows that there has been a higher incidence of sexual assault while students are abroad. The most important thing, if this is something that you encounter, is to remember that it's not your fault. It's not because you were or were not doing anything in particular. And please do know that we have resources available to support you should you need them. You do want to be a little bit careful with ride shares and taxis at night. This is probably one of the safest ways to get home, but make sure if you can share a ride with a friend, do so. And again, check in with each other when you get home. And then if something happens, even if you're not sure whether or not it was a crime, you get home at the end of the day and your phone isn't in your bag anymore. Maybe it fell out on the bus. Maybe somebody took it. You're not sure. Let Dr. Kuda or Patrizia know. We would much rather hear from you frequently and know what's going on than never hear from you at all. So don't hesitate to reach out, check in, let us know how we can help. And then finally, if there's a larger scale event or emergency, for example, if there happens to be an earthquake and we need to check in and make sure that everybody is safe, there is going to be a plan in place for how to do that. You'll go over that during orientation. The most important thing to remember is to have your cell phone always on and with you, and that if you need to go to a different location, make sure that you have your phone, your ID, and your insurance card with you as well. I do want to say some additional things about catcalls and other unwanted attention. Um, this may occur. Some students do experience this while they're in Florence. It can be hard to avoid at times, and it's not solely visiting folks who might experience this. I know local people sometimes do as well. So it's hard to avoid at times, but there's a best practice for dealing with it, which is really just to ignore it, as hard as that might be. Especially if it's going to be a one-time thing. It's some person on the street. You're never going to see them again. It's best just to ignore and pretend like you don't even hear them. It may not get them to stop what they're doing, but it's going to keep you safe, and that's the most important thing. You want to avoid escalating the situation. You want to avoid any type of confrontation with the person. So you want to make sure that you're prioritizing your safety and well-being above everything else. If you're in a situation, let's say in a class where you're seeing somebody regularly and they keep asking you on a date and you are not interested, sometimes students worry about the culturally appropriate way to respond. In this instance, again, your safety and your well-being is most important. And so it's okay to be direct. It's okay just to say, no, leave me alone. But if you need help navigating something like that, you're not sure what to do, or if you just need to vent about it, our staff are there. And again, this is a situation where you could do so in Italian if you wanted to, but you could also take a break from the pledge and talk about it in English if that is easier. And then finally, we have another part of our website that is dedicated specifically to resources surrounding sexual harassment and assault. So if these are ever of interest to you, please feel free to look at them. We have at least one local organization for each of our host cities, including Florence, on this website. So this is another resource you could always reach out to if needed. And then finally, if you're interested in doing research abroad, we have something called the Sustainable Study Abroad Grant. This awards up to $500 for any projects that are related to sustainability. This is run through the International Programs Office at Middlebury. You can apply at any point during the semester. It's usually a pretty quick turnaround time. So please feel free to avail yourselves of it if it's of interest. If you are interested in doing research that involves people in any way, you do need to get approval from the Institutional Review Board, just to make sure that any practices or any interactions you have are, ethical and following the standards of best practice. So you would need to get this approval from your home institution and from the Middlebury Institutional Review Board, even if you're a full-time student at another college or university. So this does take some time. So if you've got ideas, if you've got a plan in place, make sure that you're starting this process now. For Middlebury specifically, you can email irb@middlebury.edu for more information. I won't go through this in detail right now, but you certainly have the slide available to you and can check out the Monterey website at any point. But Middlebury does have a graduate institute out in Monterey, California, that offers a number of different graduate programs in different internationally related fields. So if you're thinking grad school might be in your future and you're interested in things like international education, teaching in translation and interpretation, global security. We've got some really great programs out there. And as program alums of a Middlebury School Abroad, as well as potentially some of our other programs, you're eligible for some grant money to go towards those degrees. Okay, so some final reminders. Please don't forget to commit if you haven't committed already in your Middlebury Study Abroad portal. Please remember to read everything carefully. It is a lot, and we're definitely aware of that. But make sure that you're taking the time to go through everything and that you're reaching out if something isn't clear. November 1st is your big deadline, with the exception of those few things that we talked about at the beginning. Make sure that you're talking with any relevant offices on your home campus now. So again, that could be Student Financial Services, your study abroad office, if your health office or your health center, if you have questions about vaccinations, medications, anything like that. If you're an international student here in the US, check in with International Student Services to make sure that your F1 and your I-20 are all good for your return and anything else that might be relevant for you. And then again, keep on your radar that you'll be hearing from us about additional meetings in January with Dr. Kuda. And please don't hesitate to reach out and contact me. You've got lots of options there. I'm here to help, and there's no such thing as too many questions. So I'd rather hear from you again more and know that you're in a good spot and you have what you need, rather than to never hear from you and to have you feel like you're not well prepared for your experience abroad. And then too, we can also connect you with program alums or returnees. This is probably one of the best ways to prepare is talking to other students who have done this same program. There are lots of different ways or things that you can connect on or about. And if you click on the other links in the message that this presentation came in, we have recordings of two interviews or videos from program alums talking about tips and advice that they would give to outgoing students. So that's a great place to start. And then from there, feel free to reach out to others as it's helpful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's time and your attention, and we will be in touch.